Hello and welcome to another episode of Mostly Mets. I'm Jimmy Mack, and today what I want to talk about is some of my impressions from the first couple weeks of spring training and from the first handful of games. Obviously, there's been some really good things that have happened, some pretty bad things that have happened, and I really just want to go over them today. Maybe we can come up with some solutions to some issues going forward. And really, I just want to get into some of the thoughts that I had on spring training so far. Obviously, still early, anything can happen, but I just want to do these from time to time to kind of update anyone who might not be as invested as I am in the team every day. Maybe they're not on social media. Maybe it's good to have these conversations and kind of group everything together. So first thing, obviously, we knew Montas was hurt last week, and he's going to be out probably till June. We got another unfortunate injury. I did a video about it yesterday, and that's Sean Manaea. Sean Manaea, we signed to a pretty nice contract this offseason, coming in to be our ace or at worst number two starting pitcher based off what he did last year. And it looks like he has a strained oblique and he's going to be shut down for a week or two. And then he's going to have to ramp back up and he's most likely going to be starting the season on the injured list. So don't expect to see him until mid to late April at the best. At the very earliest, it's mid to late April. Now, that being said, mid to late April isn't a huge deal, right? You can get through a couple weeks, you can get through a month. If it starts to become a longer, injury, a longer timeline than that, then you have to start looking at making a move. I don't know how well this rotation is going to hold up the way it currently sits, and having Montas and now Manaea out, even though you did build depth, now you're reaching into that depth to, you know, to keep that rotation intact. And now if someone else goes down, forget it. You have nobody else left, or nobody that you at least feel very comfortable with. Not that I feel super comfortable with Griffin Canning and Tyler McGill, but at least they're prior major league pitchers. They know how to pitch. They're not going to completely fall apart. So that's first thing. I'm not going to go too far into Montas because I did a video on it yesterday. If you want to see the full analysis, go watch that video, and I break down their options moving forward. Um, there is one of the options I did want to talk about, though, because there's some news on it, is signing Quintana. So there was a report that came out last night. Not a source that I know very well, but someone that does report things occasionally. That Quintana was pulled from the WBC roster. He's with the Colombian team in the WBC, trying to, you know, qualify for the next World Baseball Classic. So he was pulled from that roster, and they said it was because of an impending deal with the team. Now, obviously, with the injuries the Mets have, just happening yesterday with Manaea, everybody immediately thinks, oh, he's going to be signing with the Mets. There's no reports on that yet. It doesn't. There's nothing set in stone. There's nothing definite. It's just a lot of rumors. But it's possible that they're signing Quintana. It'd be great for a depth piece back into the rotation. Get Canning out of the rotation would be awesome. But we don't know. It was something I said yesterday is something I'd be in favor of. I wasn't before the Manaea injury, but now that Manaea is injured, it would be great to have a little more depth at the back end of the rotation. But it's unsubstantiated. We don't know if he's signing anywhere or signing with the Mets. It's unsure at this point. It's unclear. So the next injury uh, that I want to talk about is Madrigal. Madrigal came out of the game on Sunday, I believe, with a dislocated shoulder. After an MRI and further testing, it turns out he actually has a fracture in his shoulder, and he's going to be out for a long time. As Carlos Mendoza said, he'll be out for a long time. He was placed on the 60-day injured list, and so don't expect to see him anytime soon. If you see him at all, he's probably not going to play for a while. And hopefully, by the time he is ready to come back, we have guys who are already hitting, and we don't really need him. That would be the ultimate goal, right? So the only thing that this really affects, that Madrigal was a guy who was competing for a roster spot. He was a back. He was going to be a backup infielder, play a little third base, second base. They talked about playing him at shortstop, even though he doesn't really play shortstop. They thought that he had the ability to play it, but what it really does is it opens up some more opportunity for a guy like Acuna to make the team, because as currently constructed right now, the Mets only have Lindor who's able to play shortstop, and you need to have a guy. It doesn't have to be a shortstop necessarily, but you have to have a guy on your bench that can play shortstop because who knows what's going to happen when Lindor can get hurt. Even in a blowout game, if you're up 12 nothing or down 12 nothing, you want to get Lindor out of the game and let him sit down and put someone else out there. Just give him some rest. So you need someone who can play shortstop, and that could now be Acuna. Before the Madrigal injury, I was saying Acuna is going to go down to the minors. He needs to play every day. But at this point, I don't know that you really have a choice but to use him. Now, that's not saying they don't go sign someone else, or someone who's DFA'd from another team. They pick them up, or maybe they look at other options, in camp. But as of right now, it looks like Acuna is really a lock to me at this point, without any other moves being made to make the roster. Don't know how good that is for him long term. I don't think it's great to have a guy like Acuna who's used to playing every day sitting on the bench now, maybe playing once or twice a week. I just don't see that being great for his development. But at this point, you kind of have to do it. And I know a lot of people will be excited because they want to see Acuna, they want to see him play. Just don't know how it works out long term for his development. I know a lot of people want to bring back Jose Iglesias to fill that role. Now, I understand what Iglesias did for us last year. He was great. He was the heart of the team. He got us going. David Stearns has basically already said that he has moved on from Jose Iglesias. He's not a fit for this team anymore. Not because he's not a good player, or not because he isn't a great vibes guy or a great teammate or even a leader, right? It's that he signing him would lock you into your roster, because now you have nobody who has any options. You can't option guys up and down. You're not going to want to DFA a guy like Iglesias, right? If he's great for vibes, he's great for team morale and chemistry. You don't really want to bring him back, get everyone excited, and then he struggles for a couple months and Acuna's tearing the cover off the ball in the minor leagues, and then you have to DFA him to bring up Acuna. Also, he's going to cost money, right? He's the Mets at this point. Any contract they sign with anyone, it's basically double the price. So if you have to pay him $7 million, you're really paying him $14 million, and they have to look at themselves and say, is Iglesias' vibes worth $14 million? And it's probably not. And then if you DFA him, you still have to pay him anyway. So you can't be locked in with a guy like Iglesias. I wish him well, wish him the best, but at this point, he's not going to be a Met. It's not going to happen, unless they have some injury, or McNeil's out for 6 months or something. Like, it's not going to happen at this point. So we need to get off the Iglesias train. I know it hurts. I know it's bad. I know everybody wants him back, but it's not at this point. It's just not going to happen. So the Mets are going to roll with what they have. Losing Madrigal isn't going to be the deciding force of them bringing back Jose Iglesias. It's just not. Now, I want to point out some positives that we saw coming from the games over the weekend, and even yesterday. There was, obviously, you've probably seen by now Juan Soto hit a home run in his first at bat as a Met in spring training. That was awesome to see. It's only spring training, I get it, but it's just nice to see that we have that guy in the lineup. He will be the best hitter that we've ever had. You can wake him up any time of the year, put a bat in his hand, and he's capable of doing just what he did. Uh, he also beat out a ground ball to first base on a double play. That's a good sign, right? We always hear, yeah, he's a great hitter, but he can't run, he can't field, he can't. He was able to do a simple thing like beat out a ground ball to first base, um, and he got a nice ovation. That was nice to see. The seven line was there. He obviously enjoyed it. He had fun, and that's what spring training's all about. It's about him getting ready for the season, but also some of the fans that might not see him during the regular season to show him some appreciation, and that was great. It was great to see. Not going to get too overhyped about it, but at the end of the day, we don't have to worry about Soto. He's going to be fine. We know what he is. We don't have to worry about him. Spring training doesn't really mean much. Even if he doesn't get another hit the rest of spring training, he's going to be fine. So it was just nice to see. From that same game, something that was important to see, was Clay Holmes really looking dominant. Now, everybody's been worried about Clay Holmes, right? All the talk has been, oh, this guy was a reliever. We're making him a starter. He was bad last year for the Yankees, even though he really wasn't. He just wasn't a great closer. He's a ground ball pitcher, and that's what he tries to do. And the Yankees had bad defense. So it was nice to see him really go out there and look dominant. Now, it was against the Astros backups, basically. It was against a bunch of guys on the Astros who were trying to make the roster. They weren't using their A team that day, but you could just see in the way he threw the ball that he looked good. And the fact that he's already stretched out to 3 innings, and then he went and threw another 15 or so pitches in the bullpen after, he probably could have gone 4 innings. So he's already stretched out. He's been working since very early in January to try to get his arm stretched out so he can go 5, 6, 7 innings. So all the talk about, oh, he's only going to be able to pitch 3 or 4 innings and he's not really a starter, you're going to tax your bullpen. I think he's kind of, blowing past those kind of things, right? You can say all you want that he might not last the season and he's going to have an innings limit and all that. Sure, I could see that being a possibility, but he just looks to me like he should have been a starter from the beginning. He only really threw 2 pitches last year, which was the sinker and the slider or sweeper. Now he's added a kick change and a fastball, four-seam fastball, which he's really always had, but he just never really threw them because as a reliever, you're going to throw your 2 best pitches. But that kick change that he threw looked awesome. He had the four-seamer up to 97 miles an hour. He just looked really good. Spring training, like I said, nothing, you can't go crazy about it, but he looked really good in what we saw. Some other notes, some good offensive pieces. Brett Beatty. Now listen, we can't get too excited about Brett Beatty. He always looks great in spring training. He always looks great in the minor leagues. And then he comes up to the majors and he doesn't do all that well. So I can't jump on the Brett Beatty hype train just yet. But so far in spring training, he's 3 for 5 with a double, and he's hit a couple balls over 100 miles an hour, which this early in spring a lot of guys aren't doing. They're not hitting the ball as hard because they're just starting out. They're just getting back into the groove. They're just getting back to being, they're not in their groove yet. So for him to already be hitting the ball hard like that is great to see. Pete Alonso, he's only 1 for 2 this spring, but that's because he has 4 walks. He also had a double and 2 RBIs yesterday. He's looking pretty good at the plate. I don't think the long, off season, not having a contract, doesn't look like it's really weighed on him. He's kind of hit the ground running. Um, Only played, a couple games, but he's obviously seen the ball well. He has 4 walks, and he hit the ball hard, hitting a double, opposite field double yesterday, and driving in 2 runs. So he really looks like he's hitting the ground running. Another guy on the pitching side that looked pretty good was Max Kranick. This is a guy who the Mets signed last year. Uh, he's kind of been a journeyman throughout. Well, not really a journeyman, but he doesn't really have too much major league time. He's been mostly a career minor leaguer. The Mets like him. He has a good live fastball. He's another guy who's competing for a bullpen spot, a guy who can be a multi-inning reliever. He has been a starter in his career, so he could be a swing guy, even a spot starter. If you need a guy to go out there and give you 3 or 4 innings, he might be able to do that. He could play an important role on the team. He pitched 2 innings. He did give up 3 hits, but he was able to get ground ball double plays and get out of the inning without giving up a run. So pitched really well. He's one of these guys who's competing for one of the last spots really on the team. And so far, so good. Um, Really, in terms of great on the field stuff, there's not much because there's only been a few games played. We have to get more into it. But so far, there are guys who looks like we might be counting on doing good things. So I just want to point that out. There are some positives. It's not all just negative over the last week or so with injury news. So yeah, there are some good things happening. All right, before I go any further, anyone who's still here, please hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free and it helps me out. Hit that like, and I want you to comment what you think the Mets record will be this year. Anyway, The Mets made a deal last night with the Cubs for Alexander Canario. He's a very interesting guy. He's only 24 years old, was at one point a top prospect, a big time prospect for the Cubs, and he just kind of got swallowed up. They have a big, they have a lot of outfielders. They have kind of a glut in that area, so he never really got a fair shake. He's also had some injuries. He got injured, a bad injury in winter ball a couple years ago, and he just since then hasn't really gotten much of an opportunity. He's had 42 at bats in the major leagues. He hit 280, couple home runs, but he had an 857 OPS, which is impressive for a young guy coming up in only 42 at bats. Small sample size, so you can't really take it as gold. It's not definitely what he's going to be. But if you look at his minor league numbers in almost 2,000 at bats, he has over 100 home runs, 360 RBIs, 80 stolen bases, and an 850, 847 OPS. So obviously he can hit. He's got some power, he's got some speed, and he's just overall, he's got some pop in that bat. So he's an interesting guy to bring into the mix at this point. Now, what it means for the Mets, I'm not sure yet. My first thought in looking at that move last night, and all they gave up was cash, so it's not like they gave up a prospect for him or anything. It was a DFA. It wasn't a big deal. But just bringing him in makes me think maybe they have a trade for Marte. Maybe there's a move out there that we're not hearing about that they're working on behind the scenes, because really if you look at the way this roster's constructed, they don't have room for Canario on this team. And we've been told all offseason that they're trying to trade Marte and that he's going to have a diminished role on this team. And he's been asked about it now in spring training. And I know he said all the right things. I'm willing to do whatever the team wants me to do, and whatever role they think I should do, I'm going to do. But I really think they'd love to get his salary off the books. He doesn't have a big role, right? He's a platoon DH, as a right-handed hitter, so he's going to be playing against lefties basically. Jesse Winker is really your main DH. So as a reduced role, making $20 million, I could see them wanting to make that deal. Now, there was a report a week ago or so that the Marlins had to spend $20 million more to get in compliance for the competitive balance tax. So basically, they'd be losing money if they don't add $20 million to their payroll this year. Now, is that something that could be going on? Are the Mets going to dump Marte's salary to the Marlins? Just help them out, get over that tax on a 1 year deal, and get us a little salary relief. Maybe it's very possible that that's what's going on. The other thought that jumped into my head is that maybe someone's hurt. Unfortunately, Nemo's been out. He's kind of day to day with his foot. He's had foot issues since last year. Maybe it's worse than they're letting on. Maybe it's not really day to day. Maybe they're more concerned about it. It could even be that Marte's dealing with something. Marte's always dealing with something. He's just a guy who gets injured a lot, right? So could it be an injury? Maybe. That's another possibility. It could just be that they're bringing him in for depth for spring training. Now, what's important to understand about Canario is he was DFA'd because he has no more minor league options left. So if he's not going to be on your opening day roster, then he's not going to be on your team at all. He's not a guy you can stash. You can't stash him in AAA in case someone gets hurt. It's just you can't, because he'll be somewhere else. So I'm not really sure what this signing was. There has to be a reason to it other than, he's an interesting guy, right? There has to be a reason you're bringing him in, especially with all the issues they're dealing with on the pitching side and all that. To bring in an outfielder says something else is going on. And I'm sure we'll find out what it is in the next coming days. But right now, we're just kind of left wondering. But overall, he's a very interesting guy to bring in. Only 24 years old, one's a top prospect. Why not take a chance? Kind of like how DJ Stewart was. Obviously, he didn't really work out. He had that one run, that one couple weeks or 1 month that he was great, but overall just never really worked out. He was another guy who was a top prospect who the Mets took a chance on and brought him in. And he stuck around for a couple years, but never really showed you much of anything. Maybe Canario's that type of guy, but hopefully you get more out of him than just one really good month or a really good spring training, you know? But that really goes into the roster construction, right? You look at what they have in the outfield right now, and there's no spot. There's no extra spot. So you're gonna carry 13 pitchers, right? You already know who all of them are going to be, except for maybe the last bullpen spot. You know, there's a seventh spot in the bullpen that's kind of up for grabs between three or four different guys. See who that is, right? You know what the starting lineup's going to be. So that's already 22 spots out of 26 taken up by your pitching staff and your starting lineup. That only leaves four spots, but really it's only three because your backup catcher takes up one of those spots. So you really have three spots, and you need a backup middle infielder, you need a fourth outfielder, and you need a backup corner infielder. So you figure Acuna is probably going to be your backup middle infielder, and then Brett Beatty and Jared Jones are probably battling it out for that backup corner infielder, and Tyrone Taylor is your backup outfielder. Now, Tyrone Taylor has to be on the team because he's really the only guy who can adequately back up center field. So he's your fourth outfielder. So there's really nowhere left to add an extra outfielder. That's why I say I don't really understand the move unless there's something else going on. But we'll see what happens, right? That's what spring training is for. We're going to see what's going on. I'm sure we'll hear in a couple days that either someone got traded or someone is injured. But who knows? Right now, we just have to wait and see. And we got a pretty interesting prospect to see what happens with, you know? So it's really all I have today. There will be more going forward. This is something I want to do once a week or so, just to kind of update on the ongoings of the team over the last week in spring training. This week, obviously, was the start, so there's not a ton happening, but we know how spring training goes. There's injuries, there's guys who are breaking out, and there's guys who are slumping, and we'll talk about all that. But yeah, until next time, let's go Mets.